Okay, good afternoon. Good afternoon. All right, now we're together. I know this time is a little bit funny because just is after lunch, but I hope I'll take 8 minutes to go through that critical topic, Africa Game Plan. So before I go any further, I'd like us to take a step back and understand where we are from an African perspective. Africa is at the crossroad today. Africa is facing major challenges across the board. Number one is demographic. Number two is economic. As you know, we have recession, we have inflation, defavorable currency exchange rate, and we have 16 million people coming onto the job market annually. Number three, we have a climate challenge. The African Development Bank has evaluated the cost of sports to $7 to $10 billion annually for Africa, which is major. So what does it mean from a sports perspective and overall? It means that first and foremost, we need to look at the transition to sustainable development through different avenues. Number one, economic diversification. We need to make sure our traditional economies proving to be not sufficient. We need to look at new sources of growth. And this is where sports come into the picture. So number one, economic diversification. Number two, we need to look at ways to empower our people and generate impact, right? So impact is sports. So sports is impact from an economic standpoint. I think my colleague earlier mentioned it's 2 to 3% of the world GDP. But when we talk about sports, we talk about economic impact. We talk about diplomacy, sports diplomacy that is. We talk about social cohesion, so that's social impact. And we talk about societal impact. That's all together is sports. So what is the Africa Game Plan to harness sports as a sustainable development vehicle for the continent? First thing first, I would like to take you through a framework that is made of 3 parts. Number one, we need to understand the game. Understanding the game. Number two, we need to grow the game in Africa. And number three, we need to own the game and write our own narrative. So number one, understanding the game. 80% of the world, yes indeed, are sports fans. So this is the size of your market. 80% of the world are sports fans. Number two, the value of the market today, 2 to 3% of the world GDP, 5 annual growth rate over the past 20 years. Obviously, this does not include the COVID period. A projected CAGR of 5 to 9% over the next 5 years. So this is overall. So where is Africa sitting in all of this? 0.5% that is. However, when you look at sports around the world, you look at the likes of Didier Drogba, Samuel Eto'o, Salah Mejri, for those who follow basketball in Tunisia, Joel Embiid, NBA MVPs. And one of the key things that you realize is the game of IP. What is IP? Intellectual property. So this is the key. Intellectual property allows us today to have kids from the village in Cameroon, Kenya, some other places, to film his highlight, post his highlight on TikTok, YouTube, get money, and get recruited to play at the highest level. So we are witnessing the 4th revolution. People talk about the 4th revolution, which is usually technology. We're going to come back to it. But I talk about the 4th revolution as being the IP revolution, a place where Africa can write its own story and control its own narrative. IP allows my colleague here, Claire Akamanzi from the NBA, it allows the NBA to make $10+ billion a year annually through those IP. As you know, how to slice and dice it and distribute your IP across different platforms. That is IP. So what we thought is, at the African Sports and Creative Institute, we thought that we should give the platform to people to express their opinion. Tell us, what is the situation of the market? Where do you see challenges? And where do you see opportunities? So those are the key takeaways. I'm not going to go through it. I think lack of data is a no-brainer. You all know about it. Access to finance, cost of finance is an issue as well. But one thing I would like you to take away from this slide is that one box right there. 1%. 1% of the sponsorship budget worldwide is spent in Africa. Meanwhile, we are a domestic market of 1.4 billion people. Why is that? We have to ask ourselves the questions. Obviously, poor governance and challenging business environment, we'll talk about it, especially for our public sector's leaders. How do you use sports as a platform for innovation in all senses, including spurring more business into the area, alleviating taxes, for example. So technology, we talked about it with IP. Technology is a key driver, indeed the key industry driver. I'm going to go quickly. Number one is the rise of OTT, over-the-top platforms. As you know, OTT is the Netflix of the world. But the good news is that now we see African organizations taking over. We have local teams creating their own OTT platforms. In terms of numbers, 16 million people, $2 billion projected revenue by 2027. Number two, the growth sports sector. Sports sector is amazingly big, 9 billion in 2018, and it's projected to be, by the end of the year, a $31 billion business worldwide. For investors here in the room, amazing investment opportunity because it allows scalability at a discounted rate. Number three, media. As always, as we say in sports, content is the king. And it remains in professional sports the #1 revenue stream. We see the emergence of new players in the game. I'm thinking of people of Togo with the New World TV. You probably know New World TV. They snatched the rights of the World Cup from Canal+, and they're broadcasting in local languages, including Yoruba. And most importantly, this is one thing that I would like you guys to take away, is the demographic growth. When we think of Africa and ourselves as African, I think we need to remember who we are within this world. What is our DNA? And what do we represent for the world? Number one, 1.4 billion people market. Massive market. Number two, we are young. 19 years old median age. Number three, by 2050, 1 human being out of 4 will be African. So from a perspective standpoint, from an upside standpoint, from money standpoint, we mean business. So that's the key thing I would like you to take away. And lastly, on that slide, I would like you to remember something really critical when we talk about sports is the revenue of sports is actually not based on professional sports, but it's actually on grassroots. What does it mean? The daily consumption and practice of sports is the cornerstone of growth. The daily consumption and practice of sports is the cornerstone of your growth. So what's happening on the market? Great momentum. We have an amazing momentum those days on the market. We have investment flowing all across the board. You see up there in Morocco, our brothers of Morocco is going to make us proud. 2030, they're hosting the World Cup. $258 million spent in Senegal for the Stade de Senegal and Dakar Arena. We have other infrastructure projects. Here in Rwanda, $104 million spent onto the Kigali Arena. I'd like to put the spotlight as well on the revenue from sports. 83 million, that's what the CAF has done on the recent AFCON in Abidjan. And as you know, the leadership of Abidjan spent $1.2 billion in terms of investment for infrastructures. So a lot of great things happening. Obviously, I can't go through everything. I will also obviously mention the NBA, their recent valuation at $1 billion. This is amazing and great job on the Basketball Africa League. Lastly, this country, Rwanda. Rwanda coming from the genocide, as you know, but they've managed to use sports not only as a driver for economic development, but as a powerful vehicle for social cohesion. Car-free day, bringing people together. Sports diplomacy, visit Rwanda under the jerseys of Paris Saint-Germain, Arsenal, Bayern Munich. Amazing example of success. I want to make sure that we take away that. Last thing, after growing the game as African, we need to own the game. And this is what we suggest for this game. First thing first, we need more data. We need to understand the game. We need to understand what's happening. Who are the key players? How do they consume sport? Where? How often? This is data. And obviously learning and development, Africa #1 asset remains its human capital. So we need to train them. Number 2, we need to monetize and professional sports. We definitely need more skills and we need to make money. Sports is a business. Number 3, we need to redefine governance indeed and create innovative business model. When innovation has to be applied to everywhere, it has to be applied to finance. For our people here who are in the financial world, the DFI, you need to look at sports differently. You need to take risk and true commitment to the world of sports. That means de-risking, that means concessional rates, and that means maybe less debt, less equity, but balance it up. Try to find the right way to support our industry. Obviously, innovation in terms of services that we are also providing. And before I go, I would like to share this with you guys, the top 5 investment opportunities in sports. Number 1, sports tech. $22 billion economy worldwide by 2023, a CAGR of 20%, and by 2030, we have a $61 billion business. Health and wellness. People in Africa like to feel good, they like to look good, and they will be consuming sports, fitness, merchandising, and so on and so forth. So that's a $5.61 trillion market with a CAGR of 847. Fan engagement, I talked about it earlier, 1.4 billion people in this market, we need to engage with them. That means delivering services, product, devices that help them enhance their consumption or practice of sports on a daily basis. And last 2, sports blue economy. Everybody's talking about the blue economy. In Africa, we have probably the largest coastal lines in the world. How do we maximize sports? That's sports adventure, for example, in the blue economy. And lastly, sports tourism is the last one, almost a $200 billion business. Rwanda is a great example of this. So that's the top 5 investment opportunity that I have for you. For more on all of this, I'll have to definitely present you this, which is our latest book, Africa Sports Industry, Understanding the Game. It's available on our platform. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks a lot, Will. That was a very insightful presentation. And I think it's very clear from the presentation that he's just made that sports is a business. Now, how do we harness that? I think that's a good segue into our conversation. And let me start with you, Claire. For the longest time, you worked for the government and you worked directly to attract investments. Based on that experience, what legal frameworks do you think work or could potentially work to promote or to boost sports ecosystems here in Africa?
Thank you and good afternoon, everyone. Very, very happy to be here at the Africa CEO Forum and to meet very many old friends. I see so many faces in the audience, and of course, everybody here is somebody that I've known for so many years, even before joining the sports sector. But let me say that I think the regulations or the frameworks that governments or societies could work to support sports systems starts with, I think, governments recognizing first and foremost that sports is an industry for economic development. I think that realization and setting the vision and the goals that sports is going to be seen not as a recreation only, but also as an economic imperative. I think that's the beginning point. And if you do that and demonstrate that, and I think Rwanda has done a very good job of doing that, of saying, look, we are going to bet on sports and we're going to invest in sports because in addition to it being a recreation or a place to entertain and for talent to grow, it's actually going to be part of an ecosystem. And when you mention the word ecosystem and I look around, I see an ecosystem right here on the panel, you know, starting with Salim Suma. Suma from a construction company, he built this convention center. He built the arena, the sports arena, the basketball arena. He built the Mahoro Stadium for football. And just by having that infrastructure, by government saying this is something I'm going to invest in because I see this as a very big economic output, Look at how many jobs just this infrastructure has been able to unlock. Look at how many events, including this one, that these facilities are attracting. In fact, I read that Rwanda made close to $100 million from just events in the last financial year. And sports contributed, from what I read, 15%. I have an insider touch, of course, having been here recently, but I did read that 15% of that comes from sports here in Rwanda. So I think that demonstration of what facilities can do is very important. I think the second thing is once you've set the vision and government is betting and putting their money where their mouth is, the second thing is just unlocking the barriers to investment that can support the sports ecosystem to happen.
Sorry.
Yes.
Excuse me. Excuse me, allow me to welcome the Prime Minister of Cote d'Ivoire. A round of applause to the Prime Minister of Cote d'Ivoire. By the way, after this conversation, we're going to have an interview with the Prime Minister, and it's going to be right after this session, so I hope you stay. All right, you can go ahead.
Thank you, and very welcome, Prime Minister, as well. Yeah, so the second thing is unlocking investments for sports. And when you share a vision as a government that I'm going to make sports an important imperative for economic development, and then you unlock the barriers to investment to allow investors to come in. And that reminds me also of a second person in the ecosystem, Rainbow. Kingsley is looking at opening an academy for sports here in Rwanda. And he's doing that because he's seen that the ecosystem and environment is welcoming of sports as a place to invest. So I think unlocking and making it easy. And when we talk about making it easy for investments to come in the sports sector or any other sector, you're looking at the ease of conducting business. You're looking at the speed with which you can get business started or even operational in the country. You're looking at the cost of doing business. So once you address all those things, I think any sector, including sports, can thrive in a country. And then the other part that I see in the ecosystem is, of course, media. Media is a very big part of the sports sector, and you coming from I see Eleni from CNN, among others, also being able to really promote, and I think an example that we've seen, Egypt has a company called Sports United, that is a government company. Their job is to promote different aspects of sports in the country, including basketball. They coordinate the clubs, and they really make sure the clubs are really thriving. And so being able to also promote and market and putting the policies and unlocking regulations that allows a country to promote sports, I think, has also been a very key aspect of really building this ecosystem. And once you build the ecosystem, you see that sports can contribute to social transformation, to peace, to economic development. And I think every development partner or every government, when you talk about economic development, I really see sports playing a very key role of that.
I think when you talk about the sports business, the gentlemen next to you really have been in this space for a long time. And I think they've interacted with most of these legal frameworks that we're talking about. And I know, Kingsley, you partner with our English Premier League and also La Liga to invest in sports across Africa. Do you think the existing government regulations or the legal frameworks around the countries where you've been working, are they effective, really?
To discuss sports, because sports, the importance of sports cannot be underestimated. I think Africa's sportsmen and its talent will redefine the way Africa is positioned in the soft power narrative for the 21st century. I think sports is still viewed by African governments as a leisure activity, and as much as there are many symposia to discuss the impact of sports, I think Africa is long on rhetoric and very short on action. Maybe it's not by a lack of willingness to engage, but because Africa has other priorities. But if you think that the most Googled Africans in the last 5 to 7 years have all been sportsmen, that underscores the importance of taking this sector seriously. When we talk about the framework, I think charity begins at home. Africans, first of all, have to invest in themselves, not relying on foreign capital. I think we need domestic capital. That domestic capital has to be patient capital. There needs to be fiscal policy to support it. And it needs to be a real endeavor on the part of government to give the youth of Africa an outlet to basically express themselves. If you look at the statistics, they're overwhelming in Africa's favor. From the youth demographic, Nigeria has more kids under 14 than the European Union. So if you look at it in terms of being a reservoir for talent, Nigeria should be winning multiple gold medals at the Olympics. Why is it not happening? There's a reason for that. There's not a clear, defined policy in place. I think putting that policy in place, having the framework, the legal framework, the tax framework, great sovereign support, and domestic capital is the first thing that needs to happen to create the level of attractiveness that would trigger global interest.
All right. I think Salim also has a very good experience in this because he's been here long enough to know what works and what doesn't work. I'm curious to understand, Salim, what has been your experience dealing with governments across the continent?
Thank you. Allow me to first greet Honorable Prime Minister of Ivory Coast, because our panel is very privileged to have a Prime Minister. Also, Adama Big Togo is here, also Honorable Ministers. They are all here. And I would like to begin with an anecdote, actually. When we were given the task to build this sports facility and the convention center in Kigali, we were in communication with Ivory Coast government, and back then the Prime Minister, God bless his soul, Koulibaly, he was the Prime Minister, and we were chatting about how to build a world-class infrastructure, and unfortunately he passed away and we couldn't follow the file. But thank you very much for joining us today with this panel. Actually, before the setting the regulations and rules, I think the most important is the leadership. The leadership gives instructions, and we all have to follow the rest. And in the case of Rwanda, President Kagame has given a very clear instruction about building a sports hub in this country. It's not only about soccer and basketball, but today the land that you have seen, Amahoro, where the Amahoro Stadium is placed and next to Arena, is actually a land of 40 hectares. That 40 hectares is designed as a master plan to accommodate other sport activities as well. So there is a clear instruction, leadership, and objective to make this sports, as Claire mentioned, not a recreation, but as an industry. So you have to make an advance reservation of 9 to 6 months if you want to organize an event in the BK Arena today. So that shows that not only the infrastructure, but also the content management and event management is being handled professionally. So I know during our discussions with President Kagame, he was always saying, I wish we had the capacity 50% more than what we have initially designed. So there is so much demand, yet the place is limited to 10,000 for the arena. But luckily for the stadium, it's now 46,000, and soon it will be inaugurated. And yeah, I mean, this is giving so much opportunity to all stakeholders and all other participants. When you go to US, Europe, you see that sports activity is surrounded by many other functions, retail, food and beverage, naming rights, content, other content creation, as well as, you know, media support. So it's embracing a lot of side activities. So now that we have built 2 stadiums, 2 arenas in the continent, and with the NBA's support, probably there will be more to come, and we will be glad to participate in the development of those infrastructure. Thank you.
I'm glad you speak about leadership and governance, because I think earlier in the day we talked about that. And I think I want to ask Kensley, you know, we talked about risks surrounding political and governance structures across the continent. To what extent do these really affect the pace at which we move sports in Africa?
I think it stalls it stalls the process, because unless you have very fluid procedures, it's very, very difficult to attract the private capital that will back creative entrepreneurs who create value. So you cannot decrease success. It has to come through a constructive pathway. And for that to happen, the rules need to be palatable by the people who are basically going to create value.
And I think, Claire, maybe you could step in there, because we've been giving heavy incentives to investors, whether you talk about manufacturing, healthcare, education, and other sectors. Is that something that could work in the case of promoting sports? And what kind of incentives do you think could specifically work when it comes to providing incentives for sports investors?
Well, I think the first incentive, as we've seen for NBA and BAL, is to provide an environment where we can bring games, for games to play. And I think that's extremely important, having facilities, having the environment, being able to come and travel to that country, connectivity, and as well as, visa policies, etc. All these are very important. I think the most important incentive for us is just creating the environment where these games can actually be played. And when that environment is created, then you have BAL, our Basketball Africa League that NBA has on the continent. You have many other events coming up. So for me, the biggest incentive is the environment right to bring the games to play. Can people travel and move? Can teams, travel across different countries? And once you create the environment that allows that to happen, then sports will thrive.
I think let's now talk about pivoting to another conversation around, these games. When you look at BAL, the NBA started BAL, Basketball Africa League, just a few years ago, and now I think it's your biggest asset, right? And the question is, what enticed you to bring such a league here in Africa?
Well, before I forget, the BAL finals are happening here in Kigali at the Beka Arena from the 24th of May to 1st of June. So please make sure that you attend. Now that we have that out of the way, I'll answer your question. But BAL is the only other league that NBA has invested in outside North America. And you'd ask yourself, why would the NBA choose to do this on the African continent, to have their first expansion of a league in Africa? A number of things. I think Africa has demonstrated that we have the talent. Today, 50 players from Africa play in the NBA. Either one of their parents comes from Africa or they were born in Africa. That's already a very, that's a significant contribution that Africa is giving to the NBA. And some of them have really excelled. Joel Embiid, Giannis, among others that have really excelled in the NBA. So the talent is there. But also on a fan base, Africa is a young continent, median age of 19 years, very young age, and that's really where the future is. And so when we brought the Basketball Africa League here, obviously facilities was important for us to invest in, and it was really good to have some countries like Dakar. We just came from Dakar, where we saw, in some cases, doubling, in some cases, tripling of the performance of the league, of the Sahara Conference there. The seasons are getting better every year, more numbers of people attending. We're doubling attendance in the arenas. We are doing well on revenues, much better than we did in the past season. So the momentum is really high. And I think it really shows why it's a compelling case to invest on the African continent, and why countries should be thinking about doing more sports events on the continent here. And for us as NBA, it's exactly where we thought we would be, in terms of the momentum that's growing, in terms of the games becoming more competitive. I know Rwandans here were following the games in Dakar, and their hearts were always stopping because it was a very competitive season. And we will be coming here for the finals to do that. So the games are getting better, the economics are getting better, the attendance is getting better, and we can only see that 5 years from now, 10 years from now, for basketball, as we speak, for these sports in particular, it is going to be a huge economic opportunity for Africa, and we just want to see more facilities. When we get more arenas, when we get more academies happening, that just means the game is going to grow, and there's a lot of opportunity for every country to take advantage of.
I think talking about opportunities, Kingsley can speak to that, because I know you invest in sports activities, including in Kenya, and the academy that you just talked about. Could you talk a little bit about those potential opportunities that investors here can leverage and start investing in Africa?
No, the opportunities are immense, because at the moment in Africa it's a blank canvas from content creation to the talent itself. I think sports is driven by talent, and Africa has the potential to produce the best talent in the world. If you look at rural urban migration, there are more people moving into African cities now than ever before, which means over the next 10 to 20 years, Africa will produce more talent than has come before. So that's actually a scary thing. But also, there's limited capacity for slots. So Africa needs to develop domestic capacity to assimilate some of that talent. Or else you produce that talent and there's nowhere else to play. If you look at Serie A in Italy, there may be 18 teams, just 3 slots for non-EU players. So it means every African talent is competing against talent globally to go into one slot. So unless we create our own leagues, create our own platforms, it becomes exceedingly difficult. So we need to produce the talent. There's opportunity for content creation. There's opportunity to build more infrastructure. There's opportunity to create a sellable product globally. I think African Nations Cup is a great example today, broadcast from BBC and other media around the world. Africa needs to create an attractive enough product that is owned by Africans, produced in Africa, that is exportable. I think that's where we need to go.
I think.
Just add something. Thank you, Kingsley. You made me remember something. About a week ago, I was talking to a friend's son who is 9. And then I asked him, what do you want to become when you grow up? And he said, of course, I want to play in the NBA, because he plays basketball. And then he said, but if I don't make it to NBA, does that mean my dream will be shattered? And I told him, have you heard of Basketball Africa League? And I told him about it. And I think it makes the point that you're saying, you know, kids like Zani don't have to dream only for one pathway, which is the NBA. And of course, that's the cream, that's the most elite you can go. But there's an alternative to play professional, world-class basketball on the continent, because there's a league here on the continent. And while you have 50 players from Africa that are in the NBA, for the BAL, you have hundreds of players that can actually access the game from here on the continent. And I think that's exactly what you're saying. For kids like Zani, not to think that the only opportunity is for them to leave the continent, but they can dream, they can live their dreams, they can play here, and they can be paid well playing here on the continent. And that's what we're building.
All right. So let me come to you, Salim. So apart from investing in sports infrastructure, especially arenas and stadiums, you also invest in the hospitality facilities, you know, around these stadiums, and we see that kind of model taking off. We've seen, you know, Masai Ujiri investing in, you know, Zaria Court, which is, you know, a number of facilities that are going to be, you know, about entertainment and hospitality. Is that a kind of model that could work, especially when we talk about, you know, boosting the sports activities here in Africa?
Well, I mean, when it comes to the portfolio of projects, right, we tend to kind of integrate whatever we start with and continue with the next one. So when you take as an example of a sports facility, you know, you should always think about the hospitality. When the people are coming to watch games, where are they going to stay? When the conference is happening, where are they going to eat? You know, all of a sudden today, for instance, Kigali has a problem with the accommodation, hotel rooms, right? I think there are about 3,000 hotel rooms in Kigali right now, and it's not enough. So all of a sudden, there's another need for building supplementary infrastructure. So it's just triggering one another. So this is a good sign, and with the vision of the leadership and the government, I'm sure, you know, there will be some different complementary infrastructure coming up in a very short time.
Let's go into our next round of conversation, and I'll start with you, Kingsley, because when you talk about investing in sports, you need money. And where's this money coming from? That's what I want to understand. What works for sports? Is it equity, these debt instruments, you know, banks positioned to invest in African sports? What works really?
You know, sports, like any investment, it comes with expectations. So if you invest in sports, you're expecting a return. I think the disconnect we have is that sports is a business where it takes a lot more time to build capacity and to build a product of value. If you want to build a team, you need time to, in a place like Africa where you're starting from scratch, you need the infrastructure to make the product on the field to be of supreme quality. You need to train that talent. To train talent means taking a player at 10 and training them for 8 years to maturity when they play. That's 8 years of no payback. So we need patient capital in Africa. We need passionate capital. We need permanent capital. When I talk about these three, I mean you need people who invest for reasons that go beyond profit. You also need capital that is patient, that wait for 8 years to see a return on their investment. And that can be sovereign capital, which we don't have a lot at the moment in Africa. The capital that comes from private sources are few and far between. And so we have to look at external capital. And the problem with external capital, especially global capital, is that it comes to a lot of constraints when it comes to Africa. It comes to a lot of scrutiny. They have to look at governance. They have to look at other things, and it's a problem. And you cannot export models. So you cannot take the model that works in the United States or in China or in the United Kingdom and bring it to Africa. It's a different kettle of fish around here. So we need to customize models that will work for Africa, that will be attractive enough for this capital, wherever it comes from.
Salim, I think at some point we talked about the role of financial institutions such as IFC in terms of making sure that you de-risk some of the sports investments. I think you talked about guarantees. Do you want to talk more about that?
Sure. I mean, not everybody should expect the government to undertake these efforts. Also, the private sector has a big chance now. Especially when we were discussing this matter with Masai Ujiri of Toronto Raptors, as you know, the famous Masai in charge for the basketball in Africa, and with Maktar Diop of managing director of IFC. He was encouraging us, the private sector, to create in each country to develop those arenas where IFC even could be part of the partnership in terms of equity partner or some way facilitating the financing. So yeah, there are a lot of financial institutions who realize the profit and income generation of these sports facilities. And now it makes more sense as time goes by, from the feasibility point of view, these structures, if well managed, they will certainly bring profit and revenue in a significant way.
And I think, Claire, maybe I can ask you more about that. How does NBA invest in sports across Africa?
Well, NBA has invested here on the continent, and we have open offices in 5 countries. So we're in South Africa, we're in Kenya, we're in Nigeria, Senegal, and Egypt. So we're investing in branches of our headquarters to really promote the business of sports, of basketball in particular, in these countries. And, but we're also contributing to the sports ecosystems in those countries, because when we come and invest the way we have, directly doing our activities there and bringing the league games to those countries, we are also encouraging other sports facilities to also, be part of the sports ecosystem. And we've seen that grow. When you talk about investments today, when the kind of conversations we're having today, I would not have expected to have 5 years ago. We're talking to philanthropic organizations, we're talking to development financial institutions who now see sports as a very important industry for them to invest in. And some of them, we've also had individuals that say, can we invest in teams? Can we invest in clubs? Where's the opportunity? And I think that momentum is really growing, where sports is being seen beyond recreation, as Kingsley was saying, but as a business opportunity. For DFIs, facilities is one of them, de-risking investments is the other. But also for philanthropies, they've seen the value of sports in addressing some of the other priorities that they have. When you invest in sports, you create jobs, you tackle poverty. When you invest in sports, you encourage fighting, health challenges like NCDs, because people are more active. When you invest in sports, you encourage girls to play sports. And when girls play sports, they're empowered, they're learning life skills, they're in charge of their destinies, which is things that people very much in the philanthropic world and other development financial institutions care about. So sports is actually, I think, a convener of priorities in many ways. And investing, whether it's equity or as a partner or debt, whether it's facilities, whether it's supporting communities, there's a piece for everyone, I think, to invest in the continent. And I think that's something that momentum is really building, and I think sports is really going to be such a driver for a lot of what we do as a collective continent going forward.
I think people here in the room will agree with me that people love numbers. Would you quantify how much does, for instance, BAL generate to economies that host these leagues? Let's say, if BAL is hosted in Senegal or here in Rwanda, how much does such a league, generate to the economy?
Well, without having to disclose numbers, but we spend millions of dollars to be able to pull off some of the events that we do in the countries that we do. And so it's significant. It's a significant contribution to economies. It's a significant contribution to the sports ecosystem. But I think the focus shouldn't be just that. There's a lot that happens because you have, an event, a sports event, for example. What we've seen here in Rwanda, for example, when we have our finals, we have other conferences that come to organize themselves around the BAL. The Africa Soft Power, for example, we have an innovation summit. We have restaurants and hotels that have their own events and parties that generate a lot of economic output in addition to what we bring as a business to these countries. And I think that has been extremely helpful. But what I've also seen that has been really interesting, and I think NBA, BAL has been such a contributor in a country like Dakar or even Rwanda. When you bring BAL and you bring a professional league like we have done, and you showcase excellence of Africa, excellence of talent, you showcase excellence of the ability to organize a world-class sports event, just like the one you see on TV. You can actually experience that here on the continent in a world-class arena that has been built here on the continent. Being able to showcase that excellence, what we've seen that do is that it has actually inspired other sports organizations to consider Africa. And if you read the news, you'll see, and I follow the news in some countries like Rwanda, you'll see FIA, announcing that they're going to bring their prize-giving ceremony to Rwanda. You see FIFA, you see UCI, and that momentum of going beyond basketball, but contributing to showing that it's possible because you've shown excellence of Africa through a league like the one we have here.
And I think people may think this is just theory, but let me ask Salim, are you making money? Are you making money in Africa?
Are we?
Are you making money?
By the construction activities? Yeah, we are. Yeah.
Could you, expand more? Because people want to understand the value of investing in sports. Give specific examples around countries or jurisdictions where you invest your money. How do you generate money? If we can, why not?
Actually, you know what? We are facilitating when the governments, they need our construction efforts, we also bring along financing options. So either from various export credit agencies from Europe or United States, or from other financial institutions to facilitate the borrowing and also to facilitate the financial arrangement. So therefore, it's not only, as a contractor or a construction company, but also as a total solution provider. That's why probably most of the time we are chosen as the...
what would you say to countries that are still reluctant to invest in sports infrastructure? Perhaps because they think they're capital-intensive projects. Is it a losing proposition? It doesn't make sense. What would you say to countries that are still reluctant?
What would you tell countries that are reluctant to invest about investing in sports?
Well, we encourage them. We encourage them saying that, they should first make the decision and stand behind, then the rest is somehow being solved with the right partners. So that's why I recommend the governments.
That's a slam dunk of a point. Yeah. Yeah. Right? And I think let's talk about that because, for instance, I know NBA is expanding its merchandise, outlets across Africa. There are so many avenues through which you can make money, and I'm wondering such a thing whether it has the potential to for NBA, for instance, to make money, or are there streaming rights that are going to generate returns? What about sponsorships?
Well, I think the key message is there's money in sports. And I think in countries that are developed, we've seen billions and billions of money made from sports. We can replicate that here, and we're already replicating that here on the continent. Obviously, making money from media broadcast distribution is the biggest way to make money in sports, and that's where the lion's share of revenues comes from for sports industries. But what we've also seen that the other opportunities elsewhere, we're getting sponsorship, for example. We have BAL has a partnership with Visit Rwanda, and one of the terms of that is hosting the games here. That's an opportunity there to showcase a country and showcase tourism, but also at the same time having the games here. Merchandise. We have 3 NBA stores in South Africa. We see a big opportunity to expand that across the continent. We're talking to other countries as well to say we can bring NBA stores where you can buy NBA merchandise just within a city here on the continent. There are also other opportunities, to leverage. Somebody talked about technology on the continent, culture, music, entertainment. In South Africa, for example, we have a lifestyle show called NBA Life, where we combine basketball with culture, fashion, music, and I think there's an opportunity there also to build on that content. We just launched our Triple Double Accelerator, which is a tech accelerator building on the fact that Africa, and somebody did talk about that, Africans are very tech savvy, and we're building on that to really get Africans to bring their solutions that can support the sports industry. And by doing that, we hope that they can also grow and opportunities can emerge from this initiative that we have. So I think there's so many angles that you can look at this, but obviously media distribution always remains the lion's share.
And I think still talking about streaming, Kingsley, there's this consensus that whoever is building for mobile will win. And that speaks to how streaming has become a big deal for sports elsewhere, but also here in Africa. But how do you promote that here in Africa? Is it even a losing game, especially when you think about the fact that more than half of the African population do not have access to internet?
You remember I mentioned that models that roll out in Africa need to be customized for the African market. Africa, for all its merits, is still not a very rich continent, and it takes time. And if you want to stream in Africa, you probably need to have partnerships with telcos. There are limited amounts of credit cards on the continent, so you need to probably connect with Momo to be able to take payment. We've seen Kwese Sports, who had a big streaming project that didn't work. So I think we need to customize solutions for the local market. And that we need other partners like telcos and banks to make it possible.
And I think let's talk about that reality, because you talked about Kwese Sports, which failed. Remember High TV, Nigeria failed. Why are these emerging, initiatives really failing?
To the African consumer, it's a complicated one, because if a guy has $1 to spend, the way he prioritizes that dollar from health to education, as much as he likes sports, sports will come at the bottom. So we need to customize our products with the economic realities of the continent. I think that's very important in terms of positioning. If you want to sell merchandise, you want to manufacture in Africa, taking advantage of low labor costs so you can sell the product for cheap. And that will build momentum, and as we get our economies get more expanded and bigger and Africa becomes richer, those who are there will capitalize on the work they've put in before. But I think you cannot reap where you did not sow, so we have to sow, then we start reaping.
Maybe if I can add on that as well, I think understanding the market, as you said, is very important. If you look at pay TV, for example, if you combine all, whether it's DSTV or StarTimes, Azam, etc., maybe you'll come to about 50 million people on the continent. If you look at just one telecom, like MTN, I think the latest report, they have about 300 million subscribers on the continent. And so how do you factor that reality? One of the things that we've learned also is if you're going to subscribe for sports, you need to think about affordability, subscribing for a year versus subscribing for a month, but also enabling those mobile handsets, the 300 million people, to be able to buy, subscription for a day or a week that is affordable in those small bits. For us, that has been a very important lesson that we've learned on the continent, managing affordability and looking at biting small sizes that people can afford and using building on the 300 million people that you have access to on the mobile.
Salim, what emerging opportunities do you see Africa can tap into when it comes to investing and promoting sport?
You mean what other opportunities we see in the investing in sports?
Yes.
It's full of opportunities. It's not only 1, 2, or 3. You know, as we mentioned since the beginning of the panel, I mean, it's such an integrated and big coverage it has, and in every way. I mean, when you think about just soccer and basketball, you think it's only limited to those two type of sport, but you know, other athletes for the running and, you know, jumping and all other activities and sports, even in beach volley and you know, those extraordinary sports types, there is a huge talent. I mean, that's why if one thinks about developing a sports hub, it should definitely consider other types of sports, and I see opportunities in every one of them. Even Formula One can be a part of sports activity, you know, motorsports. Yeah.
I think one opportunity that I see is, we talked about it, distribution rights. But Kingsley, when you look at distribution rights, of course, the bread and butter of sports. But I think there's currently potential tension between, you know, professionalizing the sports and maximizing the revenue, because when distribution rights are sold, they tend to be gaps or inefficiencies, and you tend to see some of the potential value lost within that process before it reaches the rights holders. How do you change that?
I think in the case of Africa, the first thing to do is to create a compelling value proposition. The product must be right, or else you're going to market with a substandard product. It's a problem. The reason everyone wants to watch the English Premier League is because it's the most appealing product there is. So in Africa, be it the BAL, being other initiatives that come up, you need to create a strong exportable product, a product that's appealing to the consumer. When you do that, then you'll name your price. Selling rights is not the problem. It's about selling rights that are valuable. And to sell rights that are valuable, you need to make those rights valuable by creating a compelling value proposition.
All right, gentlemen, thanks a lot. Once again, I think we're almost at the end of our panel, but let me allow for 1 or 2 questions before we leave. All right. Looks like people are satisfied. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to give another round of applause to our panelists. Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Kingsley, and thank you, Salim.